In the dead of winter, with snow piling outside a blood-stained battlefield, a man sat alone in a dim tent. His empire was burning, his generals waiting, and death lingered just beyond the canvas. And yet, he did not raise his sword. He picked up a pen. That man was Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful ruler on earth. But instead of commanding armies, he wrote words to himself, not to conquer others, but to conquer himself. In Meditations, his private journal, he asked, "Why should I get up today and do my duty, when I could have anything, do anything?" Let me ask you now, if you could do whatever you want, would you still choose discipline? We often think of self-discipline as something for the weak, a burden, a chain. But Marcus knew the truth. Discipline is not punishment, it is protection. It is the shield we use to defend our higher self from the chaos inside us. Because even the greatest man in the world feared becoming his own worst enemy. This isn't about habits or life hacks. This is about 13 flames, 13 Stoic principles that kept Marcus from collapsing, even when the world around him did. If you've ever felt like you're losing yourself, like you're drifting further from the person you want to be, then what comes next may be the most important lesson of your life. The psychology of discipline, instinct versus will. Most people think they fail at discipline because they're lazy. The truth is harsher and simpler. You don't fail because you're weak. You fail because your brain was built for survival, not self-mastery. Deep inside, a primitive force still controls much of your behavior. It doesn't care about your goals. It cares about comfort, pleasure, safety. And that force has a name: dopamine. Dopamine rewards what feels good, not what's meaningful. That's why you scroll endlessly, delay your workout, and put off meaningful work, not because you're incapable, but because your brain is addicted to what's easy. In a world of infinite stimulation, discipline becomes unnatural. And if you don't fight it consciously, you'll serve it unconsciously. The second force is quieter, but more dangerous. It's the voice in your head that says, "I've done enough," or "I'll start tomorrow." This is self-justification, the mind's way of turning avoidance into logic. You lie to yourself so gently, you start believing it's truth. You wrap procrastination in comfort, and you call it balance. But really, it's fear disguised as reason. And then there's the third force, the most painful one. It's the voice that doesn't speak, it whispers, "You're not enough. You'll never be consistent. You don't deserve to try." This isn't laziness, it's unworthiness. The kind that stops you from showing up, not because you don't want to, but because deep down, you don't believe you can change. Marcus Aurelius faced these same enemies, but he had no modern science, no productivity tools, only his will. And he reminded himself daily, a man's worth is no greater than his ambitions. Meditations 6.16. Ambition here doesn't mean chasing status. It means becoming who you're meant to be, on purpose, not by accident. For the Stoics, discipline wasn't punishment. It was power. The ability to choose action over impulse, values over urges, reality over fantasy. And that choice, repeated daily, is what makes a life. Imagine yourself as a wild horse-strong, full of potential. But without reins, you run blindly into cliffs. Discipline isn't the cage, it's the reins. It's the dignity of directing your strength instead of being dragged by it. Marcus understood this. He didn't write Meditations to impress. He wrote it to remind himself not to fall. Even a Roman emperor needed structure. Even he needed to fight apathy, ego, and the hunger for comfort. Every day, he sat down and reminded himself, without discipline, power becomes poison. Modern life tells you to wait for motivation, But Stoicism tells you, you'll never feel ready. Discipline doesn't follow emotion, it shapes it. Your feelings are weather, your values are the ground. Discipline is the choice to keep walking rain or shine. So ask yourself, how many dreams have you abandoned because you trusted your mood over your mission? How many times have you betrayed your better self just to feel good for 5 minutes? Discipline is not about suppressing emotion. It's about serving what matters more than how you feel in the moment. It's the art of acting from intention, not reaction. Quietly, repeatedly, until you become someone your past self could only imagine. Because if you don't discipline your habits will discipline your future. Now take a breath. What you're about to discover isn't just advice. It's a set of inner flames passed down from Marcus himself. 13 principles forged in war, loss, solitude, and silence. Each one is waiting for you to light it. 1. The flame of awakening. Discipline in the first second of your day. Every great transformation begins with something deceptively small. Not a breakthrough, not a crisis, but a moment. The moment your alarm goes off and you're caught between staying in the warmth of your bed or rising to face the day. It feels like nothing. But that single choice is a mirror. It shows you who's in charge, your impulses or your identity. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, knew this battle well. He didn't just command armies, he had to command himself. In Meditations 5:1, he wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, let this thought be in your mind. I am rising to do the work of a human being." It wasn't a poetic line, it was a personal reminder. Even with all the power in the world, he still had to fight the seduction of comfort. And so do you. Because discipline doesn't start in the gym, or in your goals, or in big dramatic moments. It starts in silence when no one is watching, and you either choose resistance or regret. That first second you open your eyes is more than just a morning. It's a decision point. You're not just waking up, you're voting for the version of you that wants to lead. That's what Stoics understood. You don't rise because you feel ready. You rise to become ready. Modern psychology confirms this. Your first decision of the day sets the tone for your mind. It triggers a cognitive chain reaction. Start with avoidance, and your brain seeks more comfort. Start with action, and it leans toward momentum. And it's not about being a morning person. It's about reclaiming that crucial psychological moment where intention can overpower instinct. So tomorrow, when your alarm rings, don't wait, don't debate, just rise. Don't think, move. Feel your feet hit the ground. Take a breath. Let that moment define you, not because it's impressive, but because it's honest, and because it's a promise to your higher self. Today, I will lead. Debut. Then take one more step. Write down how it felt. Capture it. Not just the action, but the emotion, the clarity, the resistance, the choice. That small act becomes a signal, a declaration that discipline isn't a grand gesture, but a quiet decision, repeated daily. And in that repetition, you become someone unstoppable. Now, from this first flame, we move toward the second, how to keep going when motivation disappears completely. 2. The fire of determination. Do the work even when you don't feel like it. Discipline isn't tested when you're inspired. It's tested when you're not. Anyone can act when motivation is high. But the people who build something real, something lasting, are the ones who show up when every cell in their body says no. That's when the work actually begins. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You must build up your life, action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible. Book 6.30. Not mood by mood, not inspiration by inspiration, action by action. He knew what we forget. Waiting for motivation is a trap. It promises you a perfect moment that never arrives. And while you wait, days pass. Momentum fades. The version of yourself you wanted to become gets further and further away. But what if you stopped chasing the feeling and just started the motion? There's a truth high performers understand that most people resist. Motivation comes after movement, not before. When you start even in resistance, you activate focus. Your mind shifts from excuse to execution. This is why the first 5 minutes of any task are sacred. If you can move through the friction, you ignite the fire. The Stoics didn't believe in waiting for clarity. They believed in earning clarity through consistent effort. Discipline isn't about being robotic. It's about staying loyal to your path even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's quiet, even when no one is watching. So here's the shift. Don't wait until you feel like doing the work. Use the work to change how you feel. Action doesn't just change outcomes, it changes identity. When you show up, even in resistance, you prove to yourself that you are the kind of person who follows through, and this proof compounds. Day after day, 25 minutes at a time. One focused sprint, one choice to act, one silent promise kept. You don't need to crush the day. You just need to keep the promise. Start the timer, sit down, breathe, begin. That's it. Because when you build your life action by action, as Marcus said, you stop being ruled by your emotions and start being guided by your intentions. And that, more than any temporary motivation, is how you build something that endures. Now, from the fire that keeps you moving forward, even without inspiration, we step into the next flame, the one that teaches you the strength of saying nothing at all. 3. The fire of silence, knowing when not to react. Sometimes, the most powerful move is no move at all. You read a comment that stings, a text that provokes, a tone that feels like disrespect. And before your logic has time to respond, your ego is already building a case for war. You rehearse your comeback. You type, delete, type again. You imagine the look on their face when you win. But the truth is, every reaction costs you something. When you react impulsively, you pay in clarity. You trade your peace for the illusion of control. And most of the time, it's not even about the other person, it's about protecting a version of yourself that feels threatened. Marcus Aurelius understood this. In Meditations 4:18, he wrote, "Don't waste time wondering what others say or do, unless it's something you need to act on." He ruled an empire filled with betrayal, gossip, and insult, and yet he chose restraint. Not because he was passive, but because he valued his energy too much to spend it on noise. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. It is the discipline to protect your mind from battles that do not matter. This kind of silence is not avoidance, it's alignment. It's knowing your values so clearly that not everything deserves your attention. It's choosing what to care about, not because you're indifferent, but because you're focused. Modern neuroscience calls this emotional regulation, but the Stoics had no lab coats or terminology. They just practiced one of the rarest forms of strength, restraint in the face of insult. And make no mistake, this kind of silence is not easy, especially in a world that rewards reaction. Online, whoever speaks first and loudest often wins attention. But attention is not power. Peace is. So the next time you feel that fire rise in your chest, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, will this response bring me closer to who I want to be or drag me into who I'm trying to leave behind? Then do something radical. Stay silent. Not forever. Just for a moment. just long enough to reclaim your center, just long enough to protect your peace. Write down what you felt, what you almost said, and what staying silent gave you instead. That is how you train the fire of silence, not as a way to escape, but as a way to choose. Because not everything deserves your voice. Some things only deserve your absence. Now, from the strength of silence, we move into the next flame, the one that teaches you the art of choosing less so you can live more. Fourth, the fire of moderation. Resisting the temptation to have everything. There's a quiet illusion that ruins more lives than failure ever could. It whispers, if you could just have more pleasure, more success, more stuff, you'd finally feel complete. But the truth is, most of us aren't suffering because we lack something essential. We suffer because we're drowning in the unnecessary. Modern life is designed for excess. You don't just have options, you have too many. Infinite tabs open in your browser, endless choices in your fridge, notifications pulling you in 17 directions, and all of it screams, more. But Marcus Aurelius saw through that illusion nearly 2,000 years ago. In Meditations 4.24, he warned himself, if it is not necessary, do not do it. 6 simple words, but behind them is a revolution. That line wasn't about productivity, it was about clarity. Stoicism isn't about having less, it's about needing less. When you strip away what's unnecessary, you don't shrink your life, you sharpen it. You don't become less, you become more focused, more present, more real. Few modern figures embody this better than Keanu Reeves. Despite global fame, millions in the bank, and access to anything he wants, he lives with radical simplicity. He rides the subway. He gives most of his earnings away. He owns few things and wants even fewer. Not because he can't afford more, but because he knows what enough feels like. And that's power most people never experience. Why does this matter? Because temptation is not always about vice. Sometimes it's just about distraction. About one more click, one more drink, one more thing you didn't need but convinced yourself you deserved. And every time you say yes to what's unnecessary, you say no to what truly matters, your peace, your presence, your path. There's a name for this in Stoic practice, temperance. The ability to pause between desire and decision, the space between I want it and I choose not to. That's where freedom lives, not in indulgence, but in restraint. Modern psychology now backs this up. Studies on delayed gratification, like the famous marshmallow experiment, show that those who can say no to a short-term pleasure in favor of long-term meaning tend to have stronger relationships, better health, and deeper fulfillment. So what do you do when the craving comes? When your finger hovers over the buy now button, or your mind says, just one more? Or your body leans toward comfort disguised as need? You pause, you breathe, you ask one question, is this necessary? If the answer is no, walk away. Not because you're denying yourself joy, but because you're protecting the kind of joy that lasts, the kind that isn't bought, binged, or borrowed but built over time, through intention. Today, practice that, just once. Choose one small desire. Maybe it's a snack, an impulse purchase, a reactive text, and let it pass. Not forever, just for now, just to prove you can. Then write it down, what you said no to, and what that no gave you instead. A moment of clarity, a sense of control, a little more room in your life to breathe. Because when you learn to want less, you start to feel more. And that is where the next fire begins, the one that teaches you how to carry pain without complaint and rise through it. 5. The fire of endurance, carrying pain without complaint. Pain is not the enemy. Resentment is. You've felt it before, that sting of injustice, that ache of loss, that silent frustration when life doesn't go your way. But what breaks us is not the pain itself. It's the story we attach to it. This shouldn't be happening. I don't deserve this. Why me? The Stoics offered a different lens. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations 4.26, wrote, "Accept whatever comes woven into the pattern of your destiny for what could more aptly fit your needs." He didn't mean you should enjoy suffering. He meant you should stop resisting what has already arrived. Complaining is the illusion of control. It's the ego demanding that life rewrite itself to suit our preferences. But life doesn't obey that script. And in chasing fairness, we often miss the deeper gift of endurance, the power to carry what we cannot change with dignity. This isn't about passivity, it's about presence. Acceptance is not the same as approval. It's not weakness. It's choosing to meet reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. In modern psychology, this is known as radical acceptance, a core principle of emotional resilience. People who endure well aren't void of pain. They're free from the extra weight of arguing with it. They ask, given this, what now? Instead of, why me? Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who suffer in silencino because they suppress their pain, but because they choose to transform it. They don't let hardship harden them, they let it refine them. So here's your challenge. Name one thing in your life right now that you've been complaining about. One frustration you replay in your mind. Then ask yourself, what would change if I stopped resisting it? Don't push it away. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt. Just stop feeding it your attention. Instead, take one action, however small, that moves you forward. A phone call, a workout, a word of kindness to someone else. Pain loses its grip when you decide to act anyway, because every time you carry pain without complaint, you reclaim something vital, your self-respect. And from that fire, quiet, steady, burning deep, we move into the next, the fire of simplicity, where we learn that the fewer things we carry, the freer we become. 6. The fire of simplicity, owning less, thinking clearly. Complexity is seductive, but clarity is sacred. You don't notice it at first. The clutter, the noise, the endless tabs, the scattered thoughts, the notifications screaming for your attention. You live in a storm, but because the storm is constant, you start to think it's normal. Marcus Aurelius thought differently. In Meditations 4.24, he reminded himself, "Let your thoughts be simple and your actions be straightforward." In a chaotic empire, he chose simplicity not as a luxury, but as a necessity for sanity. Because noise isn't neutral, it fragments the mind, it splits your energy across 1,000 things and leaves nothing fully alive. Simplicity, in Stoicism, is not minimalism for aesthetics. It's minimalism for focus. It's not about owning less for the sake of being trendy. It's about owning less so your mind can own itself again. Few modern thinkers embody this better than Cal Newport, a computer science professor who doesn't use social media, a best-selling author who answers emails twice a week. In a world that celebrates being everywhere, he chose to be fully present in one place. He calls it deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on things that truly matter. And that ability is rare. Because most people don't lack intelligence, they lack space. They can't think clearly because their attention is being hijacked 24/7. You can't hear your own thoughts if your mind is full of everyone else's voices. Simplicity isn't sterile, it's liberating. When you simplify your environment, you create room for attention. When you simplify your commitments, you create room for depth. And when you simplify your thoughts, you make room for truth. So how do you begin? Start small. Choose one corner of your life to clear your desk, your phone, your calendar. One thing you can let go of that you don't need, don't love, or don't even notice anymore. Watch what happens to your breathing when space returns. Notice how clarity feels in your chest when noise disappears. Because this flame is not about emptiness, it's about removal with intention. The fewer distractions you allow, the stronger your focus becomes. And when your mind is clear, your path becomes visible. From that space, we now move into the next fire zone that forces you to face yourself, the fire of honesty, where all excuses burn away. 7. The fire of honesty, radical self-confrontation. There comes a moment when you run out of excuses, not because you've solved everything, but because you've finally grown tired of lying to yourself. Most people think honesty is about telling the truth to others. But the rarest form of honesty is inward. It's the moment you stop pretending that your delay is strategy, that your distractions are research, that your comfort is self-care. It's the moment you say, without flinching, "I'm not doing what I said I would do." Marcus Aurelius captured this confrontation simply: be strict with yourself, tolerant with others. Meditations 5.33. The Stoics didn't use honesty as a weapon to criticize others. They used it as a mirror to strip away the false selves they built to feel safe. That kind of honesty burns, but it also purifies. You can see this flame clearly in the life of Matthew B.C. Rawford. He was a rising star holding a PhD, running a prestigious think tank in Washington, D.C., writing policy papers that shaped the national conversation. But one day, he quit, gave up the titles, the prestige, the acclaim. He opened a motorcycle repair shop. Why? Because he realized something most never admit. He had become intellectually respected, but spiritually dishonest. He wrote brilliant things he no longer believed in. He gave speeches with no soul behind the words. His success became a mask, and the cost of keeping that mask was the erosion of his own voice. In his best-selling book Shop Class as Soulcraft, Crawford writes, "Lying to yourself, even if it wins approval, is not a sustainable form of life." He wasn't running from failure. He was running from the success that had disconnected him from his truth. That's the fire of honesty. Not confession, not guilt, but alignment between what you say, what you do, and who you are when no one's looking. And the hardest part? It's not about fixing everything right away. It's about stopping the self-narratives that keep you stuck. The moment you hear yourself say, "I just don't feel ready," or "maybe later," or "it's not the right time," that's your signal. Pause. Then ask the harder question: what truth am I avoiding right now? Because growth doesn't begin with action, it begins with clarity. Until you see yourself clearly, every strategy will be sabotage. Every goal will become another mask. And every day you delay that confrontation, you deepen the fracture between your identity and your integrity. So here's your challenge today. Catch one moment where you would normally justify inaction. Don't excuse it. Don't argue with it. Just look at it, own it. Then take a single honest action instead. Not a big one, just one that aligns you 1% closer to the person you say you want to be. Write down that shift, what you avoided, what you chose instead, and how it felt not in your head, but in your chest. That's what the fire of honesty gives you. Not perfection, but peace. And from that burning clarity, we step into a different kind of fire, the one that trains your attention to stay where your values are. 8. The fire of deep focus, the elimination of noise. In a world addicted to noise, silence has become a superpower, and focus a rare kind of rebellion. We scroll more than we think. We react more than we choose. And somewhere between notifications and distractions, our deepest intentions begin to fade, not because we're lazy, but because our attention has been hijacked, fragmented by things that don't matter, until we can no longer hear what does. Marcus Aurelius knew this long before smartphones. In Meditations 2.5, he wrote, "Do not let your mind be distracted by many things." He wasn't just giving time management advice. He was pointing to something more sacred. The ability to stay with what matters, even when the world pulls you in every direction. There's a modern warrior who lives this flame every day, not in silence, but in competition. Novak Djokovic, one of the greatest tennis players in history, has built his legacy not just on talent or strength, but on brutal, uncompromising focus. While others train their bodies, Djokovic trains his mind. He meditates daily. He follows strict digital boundaries. He visualizes every match point by point long before stepping onto the court. For him, the real match starts before the crowd cheers. It begins in solitude, in the deliberate elimination of noise. He once said, "My rituals are not superstition, they are preparation for presence." Presence, that's the essence of this fire. To do anything with full attention is to reclaim your life from the fragments that try to divide it. But this isn't about tennis, it's about how we live. Most people try to do 5 things at once and wonder why nothing feels alive. They try to please everyone and lose themselves. They say yes to everything and forget what they truly want. And all of that noise, it doesn't just waste time, it wastes you. Focus is not about doing more. It's about remembering what you're doing it for. So try this. Choose 1 hour today. Turn everything off. 1 screen, 1 task, 1 clear intention. And when distraction knocks, don't resist it. Just return. Again and again. That return is your training. That's where power grows. Then write down how it felt. Not what you finished, but how it felt to be fully there. That's the fire of deep focus, a kind of quiet power that changes how you show up, not just in work, but in life. And from that centered presence, we step into the next fire, the one that invites you to sit in complete stillness and face whatever you've been running from. 9. The fire of inner stillness, finding peace in solitude. Stillness is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of self. We often think we need more information, more opinions, more voices. But the truth is, we're drowning in input and starving for insight. We scroll endlessly, read constantly, consume rapidly, yet feel more lost than ever. Marcus Aurelius understood this. In Meditations 4.3, he wrote, "Know where you can go is more peaceful, more free from interruptions than your own soul." In the heart of war, he found refuge not in escape, but in returning inward. That's what Stoicism teaches. Peace doesn't come from quiet surroundings, but from a quiet spirit. Rick Rubin, one of the most influential music producers in history, has built his entire philosophy around that idea. While others chase trends and noise, he chases silence. He doesn't begin a creative project with a plan. He begins with stillness. He listens to what wants to emerge. His studio isn't filled with buttons and noise. It's filled with space. And from that space, something divine often appears. In his book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, Rubin writes, "Silence is a form of presence, not absence. It is a fertile space that allows inspiration to land." He treats quiet like a collaborator, not a void, but a vessel. But stillness isn't just for artists. It's for anyone trying to hear themselves again. In modern life, we confuse movement with progress. We fill every gap with stimulation. We're so busy running, we forget to ask, where am I actually going? Inner stillness is not laziness, it's active clarity. It's choosing to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. It's facing the thoughts we've buried under productivity. It's allowing the mud to settle so the water can clear, and it must be practiced. You don't find stillness by accident. You create it on purpose. So today, set aside just 10 minutes. Sit, no music, no phone, no goal, just you and the breath. Let the noise rise and pass. Let the silence stretch beyond what's comfortable. Then write what surfaced. Not to analyze, witness, because the more comfortable you become in stillness, the less you'll need the world to validate your noise. From this deep presence, we step into the next fire where discipline is no longer about breakthroughs, but about doing the small, unsexy things again and again. 10. The fire of unseen repetition, building in the dark. The world claps for outcomes, not effort. It sees the stage, not the sweat. But what truly builds greatness isn't the performance, it's the repetition that no one sees. In Meditations 10.31, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't let the impression of others' fame distract you. Instead, focus on doing what's yours to do, well and without applause." That's the essence of discipline. Not doing something once, but doing it over and over quietly, consistently, without fanfare. Kobe Bryant lived this fire. While the world saw trophies and buzzer beaters, what they didn't see was the alarm clock set for 4 a.m., the sweat on an empty court, the thousands of shots taken before most people were even awake. For Kobe, greatness wasn't magic, it was math. Reps, volume, relentless, boring, beautiful repetition. In an interview, he once said, "I don't get bored with the basics. That's where the truth lives." He understood something most people miss. The small things, repeated without excitement, are what shape identity. Not inspiration, not moments of hype, but a silent promise kept 1,000 times over. Most of us want transformation, but we avoid repetition. We think if it doesn't feel exciting, it's not working. But Stoicism says the opposite. What's boring is what's building you. The quiet email you send every day. The gym session with no one watching. The honest word you speak to yourself in the mirror. These are bricks, and every day you repeat them, the wall of your character rises. This is where true power lives, not in grand gestures, but in small decisions made with unwavering consistency. So here's your challenge. Pick one action. Something tiny, something unimpressive, but something aligned with who you want to become. Then do it. Not just today, but tomorrow, and the next. Not until it goes viral, but until it becomes who you are. At the end of the week, don't ask, was it exciting? Ask, was it real? Was it honest? Was it mine? That's the fire of unseen repetition. It doesn't seek applause, it seeks integrity. And from this slow burn of commitment, we step into the next fire, the one that teaches you how to fall without shame and rise without excuse. 11. The fire of forgiveness without excuses. Failing forward. We all stumble, but not everyone gets up with clarity. Some fall and stay down, hidden behind excuses, blame, or guilt. Others rise not because they're fearless, but because they've learned to forgive themselves without letting themselves off the hook. Stoicism never promised perfection. It promised ownership. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations 5.9, "When you stumble, get up, and don't blame the world." The Stoic way is not to erase the fall, but to rise honestly, without illusion, without complaint. Few modern stories capture this more powerfully than that of J.K. Rowling. Before the fame, before the books, she was a single mother living on welfare, recently divorced, clinically depressed. writing in cafes because she couldn't afford heating. She had no money, no support, no reason to believe the world would listen. But she wrote anyway, not out of confidence, but out of refusal. She refused to let her failures become her identity. She didn't romanticize rock bottom, she worked from it. In her own words, rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. That is forgiveness without excuses. She didn't say, I failed because life was unfair. She didn't wait for perfect conditions or emotional closure. She took responsibility for what she could still create and built a world that inspired millions. This fire isn't soft. It burns. Because true forgiveness means facing the truth. You made mistakes. You hesitated. You let yourself down. But it also means declaring, I won't keep doing it. Forgiveness is not a loophole. It's a turning point. And here's the truth. No one tells you. Your comeback doesn't need permission. It needs a decision. One honest action that says, I'm back. Not to impress, but to rebuild. Not for validation, but for alignment. So today, choose one failure you keep replaying. Write it down not to explain it away, but to own it fully. Then write one small thing you'll do this week to move in a better direction. Not to fix the past, but to prove the future isn't chained to it. Because when you learn to fail forward, even your lowest chapters become part of your strength. And from this fire of self-redemption, we enter one final flameeth, one that brings your attention to the truth that underpins all Stoic wisdom. You won't be here forever. 12. The Fire of Memento Mori. Living like it's almost over. You won't be here forever. And the sooner you truly understand that, the clearer your life becomes. We avoid this truth because it terrifies us. But the Stoics didn't avoid death, they studied it. Not with morbidity, but with clarity. In Meditations 2.11, Marcus Aurelius wrote, You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. This isn't about fear, it's about urgency. About stripping away the trivial to focus on what will matter when the clock runs out. One man who lived this truth more fiercely than most was Steve Jobs. After being diagnosed with cancer, Jobs began to see every day as borrowed time. And in his 2005 Stanford commencement address, he revealed the mindset that changed everything. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. He stopped wasting time trying to please others. He stopped saying yes to things that didn't matter. He looked in the mirror each morning and asked, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do? If the answer was no, for too many days in a row, he changed something. That's the fire of Memento Mori. It burns away illusion. It melts down pride. It leaves only what is real, your time, your choices, and your courage to use them. We plan like we have years, but what if you had only weeks, days? What would shift? What would you stop tolerating? Who would you forgive? What would you finally create, not to impress, but to leave behind? You don't need to be dying to wake up. You just need to stop pretending you have forever. So today, write down one thing you've been postponing, one thing you keep saying you'll do someday. Then do the first step. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready. Now, let the fire of mortality light the path of meaning, because when you live like it's almost over, you finally begin. And from that final fire, we rise not with fear but with fierce clarity. 13. The Fire of Relentless Discipline, doing it when no one's watching. Discipline becomes real the moment no one's clapping. It's easy to show up when there's applause, when people are watching, when the spotlight is on. But the question is, Who are you when the room is empty? When it's 4 a.m. and no one will ever know if you hit snooze or stood up and fought for your life again? Marcus Aurelius never needed validation. In Meditation 6.30, he reminded himself, "If someone can prove me wrong, I will gladly change. But if no one corrects me, I will keep acting according to nature." That is the Stoic essence of relentless discipline, doing the right thing, not because it's seen, but because it's right. No modern figure embodies this fire more fiercely than David Goggins. Once overweight, broken, and barely surviving, he transformed himself into a Navy SEAL, ultra-endurance athlete, and a symbol of unbreakable grit. But his power doesn't come from fame. It comes from suffering in silence and purpose. Goggins doesn't run 100 miles for medals. He runs because he's still chasing the man he knows he can become. He calls it embracing the suck, waking up in pain, training when no one is looking, pushing limits not for performance, but for identity. He once said, "Motivation is crap. It won't be there when you need it. You need to be driven by purpose, by truth, by the man in the mirror." That's relentless discipline, not a burst of willpower, but a relationship with discomfort, a promise to yourself that doesn't expire when the mood fades. Most people think discipline is something you do, but the Stoics knew it's something you become, a way of being, a quiet standard you carry inside you every day, whether or not the world notices. So here's your final challenge. Find one thing you've been avoiding, not because it's hard, but because it's invisible. Then do it. Not for reward, not to feel inspired, just because that's what someone like you would do. And do it again tomorrow, because that's how the fire stays alive, no in loud victories, but in quiet repetitions. And when all the noise fades, discipline is what remains. Discipline is not punishment, it's self-respect. And the 13 fires we've walked through are not motivational tricks, they're ancient tools. Tools Marcus Aurelius used not as emperor, but as a man fighting his own impulses, fears, and temptations, just like you, just like me. If something in this video lit a fire inside you, even just a spark, don't let it fade. Choose one principle, practice it today, then come back tomorrow and light it again. This is how self-discipline is forged, not in dramatic moments, but in quiet ones, repeated with courage. Now, we want to hear from you. Which fire spoke to you the most? Was it the silence, the repetition, the honesty, or the reminder that your time is running out? Drop your reflections in the comments, not just to share, but to solidify your own journey. Because the Stoics didn't write to impress, they wrote to remember, so do the same. If this video gave you something to think about, something to feel, or something to act on, like it, share it, and subscribe to join a community built on ancient wisdom and modern action. And if you're ready for the real question, here it is. When the applause stops and no one's watching, will you still keep your promise to yourself? Thank you for being here. Stay strong, stay grounded, and remember, self-discipline is not about control, it's about freedom. Until next time.